Years ago, we were both speaking at St. Xavier's induction ceremony, which is actually not too far from here. She's a member of Beta Gamma Sigma. Ana Dutra is a Brazil native with 30 years of experience in P&L management, technology, and business growth in 25 plus countries. Ana managed global clients and business lines at IBM before leading global P&Ls with CSC, Oliver Wyman, Accenture, and Korn Ferry. She's the founder and CEO of Mandala Global Advisors and former president and CEO of the Executives Club of Chicago. Ana has received the Chicago United Business Leader of Color Award, Nueva Estrella Latina Award, and the Women in Industry and Business Award. She's on the boards of C200 and Latino Corporate Director, is an NACD Board Fellow, and a member of the American College of Corporate Directors. And somewhere in all of this, too, I believe she's competed in a few triathlons. So how she accomplishes all that, I have no idea. Please welcome Ana Dutra.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I asked Maui to stay here because as I was listening to him, and I was reflecting on our almost 15 years of leadership and where he is and where I am now, it didn't go unnoticed that you have two darn immigrants on this stage with very different stories, but two immigrants that spend our lives adding value to people, businesses, and communities in this country, and now in ours as well, as we give back. So I never self-defined as an immigrant, but over the last 3 years, I've been doing that more and more. So I have a question for you. How many of you in this room are either immigrants yourselves or are first or second generation? Raise your hands. So that's the value that we bring to this country. So I wanted to thank Maui for sharing his experience with you and say, hey, you're stuck with another one now, so thank you, Michael. So we have about 60 minutes here to talk about traits of great leaders, right? Big task to accomplish in such a short period of time. So what I thought I would do is to take you back just a little bit on my experience with great and not so great leaders, and talk about what makes them great, and as you look at an ever-changing workforce in the world, in the marketplace, how you can think about not only understanding what's happening around you, understanding your context, but also figuring out how you're going to press your turbo and how you're going to make sure that you're focusing on the right things to make you a great leader, however you define it. So as Chris mentioned to you, I've spent my career not nearly linear as a career, but what I had the opportunity and the privilege to do was to deal with, observe, assess, coach, and mentor leaders all over the world. And doing this over the last 20 years, I realized that we are going through tremendous changes in the workforce, in technology, in social media, politically, economically, that actually change the way that leaders need to develop. So if I look back over the last 20 years, I saw two things happening very, very clearly. So 20 years ago, when I, first of all, 25 years ago, when I was in business school, 27 years ago, it's getting really old, but when I was in business school and when I became, like you, a Beta Gamma Sigma member, alum, we didn't even have classes in leadership in business school. At Kellogg, there was one class in organizational behavior that was the closest that we got to that. So we had to figure it out. By the way, if you joined a company and at some point somebody told you that you needed a coach or a mentor, bad news. You were in trouble at that time. So what's now seen as a perk and people expect to have was actually not even socially accepted at that point. So you start to fast forward and you start to see leaders, first of all, under much, much more scrutiny and pressure, in particular after the world financial crisis of 2008. Now you have social media. Back then, what you said in a room, if it was not appropriate, it would only be known if somebody who was in that room decided to repeat it. Now all you need is one person with a Twitter account in this room. If I say something that's not cool, everybody else you know. How many of you work or team with people who have not even met yet? I asked this question yesterday in a conference that I was talking to, and more than half of the room work in teams that are so virtual they have not even met their people yet. How many of you are competing with people in other countries, in other continents? These are the people who are going to be applying for the same jobs that you're applying. So, and the other thing is that you got a title 20 years ago, you got it. Now you have to earn it every day. How many times we see companies, I can think about just over the last couple of months, think about Boeing, think about WeWork, think about Johnson & Johnson, giants, companies that have been around forever, and then suddenly somebody does something that's wrong, and they get in trouble right away. So, tremendous pressure on leaders these days, and it's only going to increase. Number two is, if you look at when people took their first management jobs 20 years ago compared to now, people are taking responsibilities to manage other people, to manage clients, to manage businesses 6 years before they did 20 years ago. I'll tell you what, I was part of my LeadershiT show in my first management role. I can just imagine having that responsibility 6 years before I had. So what does that do? What does that mean to you? That means that you will have to be much, much more clear and focused on what you want to develop, what you want to be great at, what you want to be known for, so that you don't get caught in this myriad of pressures coming over you. So, what do great leaders do in general? If you can take one thing home with you, it's they reflect. They are always thinking about what brought me here. Do you stop to think about what got you to this room? When you're successful, what do you lead with? Personality traits, skills, competencies? Is that because you're the smartest cookie in the box? Is that because you have phenomenal communication skills, you're a great relationship manager, or you know about a subject matter, something that nobody else knows? So that got you here. Now think about what's going to get you there. And there, bold, underscored, and in quotes, because my there may not be yours. My there may not be yours. You may want something very differently than what I want, and don't allow society or family or friends to determine what success or happiness means to you. I've seen so many miserable leaders because at some point throughout their career path, somebody told them that they would only be successful and therefore happy if they became CEOs of a company, or if they had a PhD degree. And at the end of the day, that was not what rocked their boat. So don't allow anybody to define you're there for you. Do what you love. Do what you love, and everything else will come. The third is, what do you have to do differently as you move in your career path to get there? And how are you going to make sure that in the process of getting there, you don't compromise your values, your beliefs, the promises that you make to other people, your intentions to fulfill those promises, and ultimately, what you actually do? It's not uncommon, believe me or not, to see pretty powerful people who actually, over the course of their careers, compromise their values over and over again. And guess what? They may even be successful by societal standards, but at the end of the day, when they put their head on the pillow, they know that they're not being true to themselves. So think about that, because that's what's going to define your story to this point and the story that you have the opportunity to create. Because at the end of the day, leadership is a series of choices. It's the big choices, it's the day-to-day choices. And there's a question that I always ask CEOs when coaching, which goes like that. And I'll ask you to tag along with me. So imagine that one day, many years from now, in your case it could be 50 years from now, you're no longer around. Or let's make it more practical. Let's imagine that you graduate, okay? And you go on with your life, you get a great job, or your company flourishes and all that. And now I want you to think about the one person who right now you love the most in the world. It may be one of your parents, a sibling, a significant other, a friend, pick a person. One day, that person is going to bump into somebody who went to school with you and who was a classmate or was part of a study group with you. But here's the trick, neither one knows that the other one knew you. Your name is going to come up. What would you like your most loved person to hear about you from a stranger? If there's just one word, when somebody says, oh, Mary Smith, and say, oh my God, I went to school with Mary Smith. Mary Smith was?
Great.
Great. What else?
Honest.
Honest. What else?
Dependable.
Dependable.
Reliable.
Reliable. Ambitious.
Had high integrity.
High integrity. Charismatic.
Honesty.
Honest. What about caring?
Caring.
Passionate.
Passionate. Yeah.
True. Authentic.
Authentic.
Because that's what I always hear. And I'll tell you, asking this question for 20 years, I never heard anybody say, oh, Mary was the best accounting student I ever heard. Or she was an amazing cost cutter. Or boy, she knew how to run a department like anybody. The things I hear are exactly what you said, and they go around that line. So the question I have for you is, as you think about the legacy that you want to leave behind, and you're not too young to think about it. I wish somebody had told me that when I was your age, when I was in your shoes. But if you think about how you want people to define you, how you want to be remembered, what you want to leave behind for others, are you living your life? Are you talking to people? Are you making decisions? Are you treating others in a way that's going to make you be remembered like that? It's so simple for us to get caught on the ego-driven things, right? I want to be the smartest one. When I open my mouth, oh my God. And you're not even listening to what somebody else is confiding on you, is telling you. You are, how many times you catch yourselves in the classroom, and you got to be honest about this, because I'll ask you to raise your hands. How many times do you catch yourselves in a classroom, in a study group, in a meeting, and you realize you're not even really listening to something that somebody else is saying because you're so caught up on what is the darnest smartest thing that you're going to say next? All of us. We're just human beings, right? The irony is that if you actually listen more, you are probably going to say things that are much more relevant to that situation. The interesting thing is that if you listen more, people are going to remember you more because you were a great listener. There's something that Maya Angelou said that I think it's one of the most brilliant things a human being has said, which is, people may not remember you for what you did or for what you said, but they will remember you for how you made them feel. And if you make people feel good and powerful and inspired when they are around you, that's what you're going to be remembered for. Now let's get into a little bit of data. Over the course of the research that I've done, that my team has done on leadership, we found 6 quotients of leadership, and we started to assess leaders around that. So, first one is IQ. It's sheer raw intelligence, right? You don't hear many people when they reach the top being dumb, or others saying, oh, you know what, that's, oh my God, really, really dumb, stupid. That's not. So that's one that gets you there. The second one is a technical quotient. In other words, do you know your stuff? So if you are in finance, how well do you know finance? If you're a chemistry major, how well do you know chemistry? If you are a cybersecurity expert, are you really, really good at that? The third one is the motivational factor. And that's a very interesting one. And I used to ask that a lot as I was interviewing people for jobs. At the end, I would ask them, how much do you want it? Really? And I've seen companies making decisions, having 2-3 candidates who were pretty comparable. And at the end of the day, making decisions on, wow, but he really, really wants it. And the other one is excited, but we're not too sure. So ambition is not a bad word. In fact, somebody said that when we were talking about, somebody said, oh, ambitious. Ambition becomes bad when it's vicious, when it's destructive, right? When you're willing to sacrifice values because of your ambition. But wanting something, making that clear, and building your case for why you should get it, there's nothing wrong with that. The fourth one is an interesting one because it changed over the years, and it's the experiential factor. It's the old been there, done that. Why has it become a little bit iffy over the last 15, 20 years? Because you've seen people who very, very young rise to the top. And when they finally, at some point, face some sort of failure, all of us should. I always say that there are 2 things that everybody should experience throughout their career. One, you should always be fired once. It is an interesting experience, I'll tell you. But you learn a ton about others, about yourself, about resilience. The second one is a sales job. How many of you in this room have done any type of selling? Great, almost all of you, because you will use that throughout your entire life. You are always selling an idea, you're always selling a brand, a personal brand. Every time you communicate, you're selling. You may not want to admit it, but that's what you're doing, right? So the fourth factor is the experience factor. And the problem is that when you take a Marissa Myers with Yahoo or an Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos, they rose so quickly and they were such stars and they never experienced any type of failure or even a no, that when they face that, they just don't know what to do. And many of them go rogue. And when they go rogue, that's when they implode. So that's experience factor. The fifth one is your emotional quotient. And Maui touched on that a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's your emotional resources to get things done. Your emotional resources to continue going without losing your cool when you are under pressure, when you're angry, when you have too much on your plate, when complexity goes off the top. And then the fifth one is your learning factor. Is what do you do, or learning quotient, what do you do when you don't know what to do? How do you learn from past experience to apply moving forward? So if I tell you that, and we looked at thousands of leaders, the ones who fail more than 90% of the times because of just 2 of those 6 factors. Which ones would you say, and I'll recap for you. So it is IQ, technical quotient, then the motivational, the ambition, the experience, emotional, and learning. I'll take any guesses. Emotion, you got one? And the learning. Oh, you're good. You're good. I did this yesterday with pretty experienced people, and they went on to the motivational, to the experience, but that's exactly right. So think about that. As current and future leaders, if you become better than average on just those two leadership quotients, learning and emotional, you are way, way ahead of the game, right? So what goes into that? Let's talk about both separately so that you know what to work on. And as I talk about that, I'll ask you to do one thing. Start to rank yourself in those. Are you an A, B, C, D, E, F? No, just A, B, C on each one of them so that you can choose then what you're going to work on. So let's look at the emotional quotient. So I'll simplify it for you. We're talking about things like confidence, right? You are poised and you know what to do when you do your homework, but you also pair that with humility, which is the ability to, even when you're walking into a place and you've got a plan, you keep your ears and eyes and mind and heart always open to learn from others. And others, that doesn't mean that these people need to be more senior experienced than you. They can be your peers. They can be the janitor who says something that makes you realize that something can be improved in that operation. So we have confidence and humility. The second one is energy, and energy has nothing to do with physical energy. It has to do with resilience to deal with complexity. And by the way, all of us in this room have different energy thresholds, have different composure thresholds, which is the next one, is when do you lose it, right? When is the point that you say, please, not a flat tire, not now, I can deal with one more thing in my life. Who has dealt with this situation? You had a paper to turn, you had an exam to go through, you're applying for a job, you just went through it?
Oh, yeah.
So when is the point, and what do you do when you say, oh my God, I can't handle this? You know what to do? Breathe. Pause. Do exactly the opposite what you feel compelled to do, which is to attack the problem, right? It's actually step back. Step back, look at everything that you need to deal with, and determine which one is a rubber ball that can bounce and go, which one is a crystal ball that if you don't hold it, it will break. What am I missing here? Tolerance for ambiguity. If you think about the fact, who has heard the expression VUCA world? It's a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Guess what? It won't get any better. Stress will always be part of our lives. The question is, how do you deal with it? Do you deal with it to increase your resilience threshold, or do you let it deal with you? So those are the emotional factors that if you can master some of them, and you may say, listen, there's something here that I'm not even going to touch. I'll ask others to help me with. Now let's talk about the learning agility component. So what is agility about? It's about being malleable, being flexible, right? If we look back in the non-human species, the ones who actually lasted the longest, what is the species that lasted the longest in the world?
The shark?
Roaches. Yeah, roaches are prehistorical. It's not because they were the biggest, the dinosaurs are not there, but what they learned was to adapt. It's adaptation, right? If you know how to adapt, if you know how to read the people around you, how to figure out that, you know what, there is no cookie cutter formula to address every situation. You need to step back and think, how is this different? You're a long ways ahead. So, the only problem is that sometimes even companies give us a different message. Because if you think about how many people are promoted to the next level based on what they did well before, but nobody tells them what they need to do different next, that's a trap, right? Because the message that I'm receiving, if I'm not acutely aware of my surroundings and of critical success factors, is, hey, just keep doing what you did before and you're going to succeed again. How many times we see salespeople who are incredible individual producers, and then they become sales managers, and they even compete with their people under them because they don't realize that now their most critical skill is not to sell independently, is to build a team that's going to perform at very high levels, right? So let's talk about the 4 components of learning agility. So the first one is actually somewhat similar to IQ because it's the mental agility. So it's the ability to think critically, to triangulate, to say, hey, I've not seen exactly this problem before, but I can go back to something that I've seen before and apply this. Probably the easiest one to develop if you don't quite have it yet. The second one gets more complicated. It's actually people agility. So you know how you know that somebody is highly people agile? Is when you hear, what you hear about that person is, oh, she has this ability to get the best out of people. How many of you heard that from some people in your lives? Gets the best out of people. Gets the best out of people, by definition, denotes a high learning agility individual. People agility individual. Because this is the person who you're going to send from South Africa to Germany to Brazil to the United States, and they'll figure out that the cultures are different, people are motivated differently, and they will inspire people to give them their best. I have 3 daughters, and following the recipe, my oldest one is the driver, is the one who doesn't tolerate mistakes, is the high standards. My middle one is the peacemaker, the youngest one is the blend. One day when they were all little, and it was a very hot summer, Sunday afternoon, I took them to get an ice cream. So we got to the ice cream parlor, they chose their flavors, and immediately my oldest one proceeded to tell my youngest one how to unwrap the ice cream, how to hold it so that it wouldn't fall, and all that. So we get out, and lo and behold, the youngest one drops the ice cream on the ground. Youngest one starts to cry, oldest one starts to yell, middle one disappears. Like, where did this kid go? 2 minutes later, she comes back with a new ice cream for her sister. And the tears dry, and I looked at her and I said, well, what did you do? You didn't have any money. How did you get this? Well, Mom, I went inside and I explained to the store manager what had happened. My sister was crying. She didn't even get to try the ice cream. And he gave me a new one to bring to her. Great. So we're in peace now. They've finished their treats. And I say, well, now it's time to go home. Let's go. The store was packed. We were still outside. And my middle daughter says, oh, no, wait, I need to go inside. And I follow her thinking, what is she going to do? Thinking actually she wanted to go to the restroom. But she gets there and the store is packed. And she stands in the middle of the store and she says, hey people, I just want you to know that this is the best ice cream store in the city. And this guy is awesome. And I'm like, run for mayor, baby, right? She was not older than 7 or 8 years old. But that's a naturally high people, agile person, right? She figured out that she probably, knowing her, got lots of free ice creams out of that one episode. Then the third one is change agility. How many of us, even though we say we love change, we actually fear it dearly, right? Great leaders, not only they adapt to change, but also they drive change when they feel it's the right thing to do. Easier said than done. Change is scary. But if you want to be a great leader, look for opportunities and where you can change things to make it better. And then for years, we looked at those 3 factors of agility. And we couldn't figure out why we were assessing leaders that scored so high on the 3 and were still not performing. And the key was what we started to call results agility. So it's the ability to have a plan, understand what results you need to achieve, but as circumstances and market conditions change, readapt, reallocate resources, reprioritize, so that you can still be laser focused on the results that you need to achieve. So, 4 components, right? Mental, people, change, and results. But I'll tell you one thing, none of that matters if you don't have a good dose of self-awareness. And throughout the years, I've assessed many leaders, and if we had 2 candidates for a position, and one of them had just one area for development, but that person was defensive, did not listen, did not want to take feedback, and we had somebody else who had 3 or 4, but that person was open to feedback and wanted to improve and was always thinking, what can I do differently, what can I do better? Which one would I recommend for the position? The second, by far and above. Why is that? Because somebody who doesn't even have an interest in learning will always be like that unless that person gets hit by a truck. And by the way, how do you know people with low self-awareness? They are the ones that if you give them feedback, number 1, they get defensive right away. They will not even let you finish the sentence. They'll say, well, you're wrong, here's what. The other thing that they will say, I know exactly who told you that. So they'll focus on the source as opposed to on how he or she is being perceived. At the end of the day, folks, it doesn't matter. If you get similar, consistent feedback from many people, that's how they see you. The norm is to have the little Kit Kat painting himself and being a big lion. Right? We love to see themselves as we want to be, not how others see us. So focus on that, right? So self-awareness, how do you develop that? Number 1, be acutely observant of your surroundings. Think about how people reacted to you. Maybe it was something that you said that you didn't even notice. Second, think about people around you who care about you and who you trust, and ask them to give you feedback. As you finish a meeting, as you finish an interaction, as you sometimes even see that, boy, I may have rubbed this person the wrong way, but I can't quite put my fingers on, ask somebody else. And then sometimes, by the way, it's going to be nothing. You don't want to be high maintenance, me. How did I do? How did I? It can't be like that to the point that you think that the world, we tend to think that people think more about us than they really do, by the way. But it can't be like that, but a genuine interest in improving and being better, and do that through self-awareness can go a long ways, right? So reflect on your leadership learning journey. It's all about choices too. You may decide that you have 3 or 4 areas that you would like to improve, but hey, that one, I don't know that I want to change. I don't know that I want to put a ton of effort in that. Maybe what I do is I'll pair up with somebody who really excels at that, and we're going to be a great team together. There are things, I always tell the story about even personality traits. So if you think that I'm loud and out there right now, you haven't seen me when I was your age. So when I went to law school, I had a very best friend. And we were driven, we were the kids who sit in the front row, we had all the answers, we came prepared for battle, right? And every time the professor asked something. We were there like, pick me, and we would blurt the answer out. And then we started to notice another friend of ours, and interestingly, she is a judge now, who was, boy, she was so composed. She was so poised. She would do this thing that she would, before answering, grab the pen and look at the pen as if she was pondering the alternatives. And then she would say something, and the professor would say, "That's great." I'm like, isn't that what we just blurted out 30 seconds ago? But it had to do with how she communicated, not necessarily the content. So my friend and I said, look at that, right? She gets this respect, this attention. Let's be like Mary Alice. We're going to be just like her. We're going to have like this calm tone of voice, pick the words, not jump in, not be too loud. How long do you think that lasted? Not even a day. That was not who we were. So what you do over time is to understand, how can you be effective in a team, in a situation, in the workplace, without being inauthentic, right? And that leads me to the next. I have two other things that I want to tell you, so it's this portion and then my 10 top pieces of advice or things that I wish somebody had told me. But that takes me to the next topic. So when I retired from, I was the CEO of Korn Ferry Consulting, and when I retired from there, I had this publishing companies coming to me and say, you know, you teach all those classes and speeches about leadership. Why don't you write a book? And I said, about leadership? Yeah. And I said, well, absolutely not. I mean, do this just for fun. Go on Amazon and type books on leadership. There are thousands of titles, thousands of them, and they're all about the best practices, the best-in-class leaders, the biographies that sometimes only show the bright side of individuals and all that. And then I said, well, but then what I see is that people go into the workplace and all they see, or a lot of what they see, is leadership. It's not leadership. So, what I'd love to write about is what people find and how to deal with that. So I was fortunate enough that one of the publishers allowed me to do the research and tap on their data and do the interviews, and then the Kellogg, I teach at Kellogg as a visiting professor and at other schools, both in Fisher and all that. And so I collected a ton of data. And here's the interesting thing. If you think that leadership is very diversified, it's actually not. There are a finite number of bad actors or bad characters that each and every one of us are going to face day in, day out in life, in the marketplace. So you have the tyrant or the bully. You have the no filter. No filter is kind of funny sometimes, but very annoying when it actually drags you down. You have the unaccountable, the chameleon, right? I will wait until the most senior person in the room has an opinion, and then I'll say, great idea. But the no filter will jump in first. And you start to observe them. You have the user and abuser, the lid grabber. The lid grabber, when you get into the workplace, you recognize right away. They get your budget, your clients, and then they poach your employees because they got your budget to do projects that now they author, now they need your people too. And you need to know how to deal with them. So the whole work was around, how do you deal with these people when they are your peers, when they are your bosses, when they work for you, and most important, when we are stressed out, under pressure, pissed off, tired, what traits come up in ourselves? right? So that is super important too, is to think, okay, who do I turn into? Do I turn into a tyrant when we have a deadline to turn in a paper and my colleagues, my classmates are not doing their part? Or do I want them to, do I turn into a chameleon? That's not my fault, let's blame it on somebody else. So, I highly recommend read the book, and since I'm not going to be able to stay around after we're done, you can find me on LinkedIn or can shoot me. Chris, Denise, and the team have my email if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have a great story for the next one, then I'll take that too. But I want to finish with a couple of things that are near and dear to my heart. So I gave a couple of commencement speeches, but most important, when my oldest daughter went to work, I wrote her a letter with the 10 top things that she should think about as she started her professional life, and I put that in her purse, and she says that she still reads that occasionally. So I want to give you my top 10 career tips and traps. The first one, and you can see that in my story, right? By no means I had a linear career path, and most of you will not, by the way. So my advice is have a plan. Always have a plan, but always be open to different opportunities. Always, always listen, always engage in a conversation. It may not go anywhere, but who knows, sometimes it does, and for me it went somewhere several times. The second is listen attentively and never be embarrassed to ask questions. Be curious. I had 3 questions who completely changed my life. The first one was when I worked for IBM. I was back in Brazil, and I was in my office. And a co-worker came in and said, I just came to say goodbye. So just to situate, this was in 1989, 1990. Came in and said, I just came to say goodbye. I am going to the US to get my MBA. And I thought, oh, why? What is that, right? Is he going to join a sports team or? And I could have not asked, and if I did the research, I would only see what was on paper. But I said, you know what? I'll assume my ignorance. So I said, you know what, Francis, what is an MBA? And boy, by the time he was done, I wanted one of those. So that's how I ended here. The second was when I was then years and years into my career, and I started to get frustrated with the fact that most of my work was around giving advice, but I was not making the decisions. I decided to ask my boss, who was also my mentor, is there any way that we can be advisors, be consultants, but also make decisions? Because I want to live with some of the decisions I make. And that's when I got my first P&L job responsibility within a professional services firm. So I could have never asked that, and I would probably leave if I hadn't done it. And the third one, which is the one that my children love to hear me telling, was actually I was the one who proposed to my husband. So 3 times, by the way. He didn't say yes the first time. So the first and the second were kind of a proposal. The last one was an ultimatum. Was like, this is it. And I would still be dating him at 55 years old if I hadn't done that. But we're happily married to this time. The third one is build your own advisory board and sponsorship boards. I mean, companies have that. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you have your mentors? They will change over your life. But one thing that is important, never ever confuse mentorship and sponsorship. Your sponsors are there to pound the table for you. Your mentors may do that occasionally, but they'll see the job as guiding you, asking the right questions, making you think, help you to go through different situations. Never always make that relationship clear, because I'll tell you, I lost a promotion because I thought that my mentor was my sponsor, and my mentor saw himself as a mentor. So when it came time to decide who was going to be promoted on that round, there were people who had people pounding the table. He didn't think I needed it. Big life lesson, right? Number 4 is don't underestimate the power of long-lasting relationships. You can put some great relationships in the back burner for a while, but then reconnect with them, but don't let them die, because you never know. You never know if somebody who you mentored at some point is going to be a big help for you, and just surround yourself with people who energize you as opposed to de-energize. In that same vein, be a giver. Be grateful and pay it forward. I do believe in karma. Everything you do, good or bad, will come back to you. And a couple of other reasons. Givers are happier, and there's also multiplier effect, right? So let's say you're 300 in this room. You can take everything you learned from those 3 days and keep it just to yourselves. Or what if we make a deal that you will go back to your schools or places of work, and you will commit to share the biggest nuggets and learnings with 3 people who you care about. So suddenly what we're doing here is not just touching 300, it's touching 1,200 people, right? So that is super, super important. It's pay it forward. Aim high, work really hard, but celebrate the small victories along the way. For us type A people, it's just so easy to just look at the next goal and not celebrate. And there won't be any success without hard work. 7 is create the right opportunities and avoid opportunities to mess up. Super important. There's this great Abraham Lincoln story, he was called Honest Abe, right? And when he was an attorney, somebody came to him to ask to defend him on a case, and he asked, did you commit the crime? And the person said, yes, that's why I'm coming here. I need the best lawyer, and you're the best one in town. And he said, I'm sorry, this violates my values so much, I cannot defend you. And the person kept saying, well, if you do it, I'll pay you this, I'll give you that. And he kept saying no, and at some point, he takes that person and kicks the person out of his office. Years and years later, they bump into each other again. And the person said, you may not remember me, but I tried to hire you to defend me at some point. And at some point, you kicked me out of your office. Why was that? And he said, because you were getting too close to my price point. So all of us will be tempted at points in time. Don't let it get there if it violates your values, because you will regret. I saw once, a few years ago, a speech from a guy, and the title of the speech was Why Do Good People Do Bad Things? And this guy was with WorldCom. When the WorldCom, he was an attorney, when the WorldCom scandal erupted, and he ended up in jail and lost his license to practice law, lost his family, lost essentially everything. And he said, I had a lot of time to reflect on why I did what I did and why I ended up in jail. And it essentially boils down to a couple of things. Number 1 is that human beings have incredible power to justify anything they want to do. We can always find a way to justify. We start to train that when we're children, right, with our parents. There's always a way to justify. Number 2, peer pressure is just too strong, right? To have the same things and to live in those to keep up with the Joneses. And third one is the fact that your boss is doing it doesn't mean that it is okay for you to do as well. And I never forgot that thing which leads to the next one, which is be clear on your values, your life purpose, and what really matters to you. Be confident in yourself, but never stop listening and learning. We talked about that, right? All of us suffer from some imposter syndrome. How many of you have got into a school or received a job offer or got a grade that you said, oh my God, this got to be wrong? Raise your hands, it's not me, right? Or even worse, I fooled them again. Right? right? Remember, when you walk into a room for an interview, everybody there is looking at you and thinking, wow, she looks so confident, right? She's so poised. And you may be crumbling inside. What you don't know is that people are seeing your outside with their insides. And you are seeing their outsides with your insides. So we may be all crumbling. I might be freaking out to come here after Maui, right? But you would not know because you're seeing my outside. So use that to feel confident. And the last one is choose to be happy. Happiness is a choice. People can always have ways to justify why they're miserable, even though others are looking at them and say, you have everything. There's a great, great documentary that I will suggest to take a look at. It's called Happy. And you can find it on Amazon Prime, Netflix, whatever, share with your colleagues. And it's this research done by a couple of Harvard professors. And they went around the world trying to find the happiest people they could find and why others said, well, so-and-so is just so happy. And it had nothing to do with money, power, or success. It had essentially to do with choice. So for all of you in this room, who I am sure are going to become great leaders, and hopefully we're going to remember this day, I want to leave for you a gift that was given to me by a friend who worked with me and who subsequently passed away, but he left this. And in the end, they'll follow you. And in the end, they'll follow you, not because they're paid, not because they might see some advantage, not because of the things you have accomplished, not even because of the dreams you dream, but simply because of who you are. The man, the woman, the leader, the boss, standing up there when the wave hits the rock, passing out faith and confidence like life jackets, knowing the currents, holding the doubts, imagining the lights and terrors of every landfall. Captain, pirate, and parent by turns, the bearer of their countless hopes and expectations. They will give you their trust. They will give you their effort. And all they ask you in return is that you treat yourself. So thank you so much for having me. I am a hogger of the time for questions, just so you know. So the fact that we actually have 10 minutes is pretty awesome. So anything goes unless you really want to break, which is fine. Yes.
Hi. Me.
Hello.
First of all, we want to thank you for what you told us. My name is Daniela. We are from Colombia. It's our first global leadership, so we are kind of excited. And I want to ask you, sometimes I have some problems when I'm in a team. So I want to ask you, how do you think we can be an effective leader if our team has people who are not engaged with the goals, or they just simply don't want to participate in the task?
That's a great question. I hope you all heard it. How can we be a leader? You know what? One of the biggest tasks, roles of a leader, is to actually create engagement, right? And you never know what is going on in people's lives. Maybe they are even questioning whether they want to go on with school or not. Maybe they're going through some serious personal thing. What I would suggest is have a side conversation with them. Exposing them in front of everybody else won't do any good, but first start that conversation, showing that you're coming from a place of empathy, compassion, and from a place of caring. And you can start even by saying, hey, listen, honestly, I didn't even have to have this conversation with you, but I care, and I'm worried about you. I'm noticing those things, and I need you to know First of all, we're here for you, and we need you. You are such a bright person. You can so help us to develop the best paper or whatever, but compassion, eagerness to understand, true, and then highlight what that person can do and how you need that person. And I would love to hear if that will actually change the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Matthias Pinochet. I'm from FIU. And I wanted to ask you about the last point about and just to be happy and happiness is a choice. Because many of my friends that have said that, and what they really meant is that when something tragic happens, you can either choose to be happy or be sad. For instance, I don't know, I have experienced a lot of, loss of someone and stuff like that. And most of them told me that, oh, but there's such a good place that to be happy and stuff like that. But we just say that we choose to be happy because of the, we choose to take actions on do activities that we love. Or is a set of mind that we say like, oh no, we're happy, happy.
No, it is some of both, but also it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience your own sadness and grief at times, right? But you can carry a banner that says, I'm going to go back to what Maui said, you can carry a banner and a business card that says I'm a victim, I have a deficiency, or I come from a poor background, or I suffered so much in life, or you can acknowledge that that's part of your personal story, and that actually at some point made you deeply sad, but that you're going to look back and think about what you learned from that experience, and you're going to look at the opportunities in front of you. So I don't mean that you're going to be slap happy and say, oh, everything's fine when things are crumbling around you. Is acknowledge them, but don't let the challenges, the sad stories, or things that you're going to go through rule your life or determine your destiny. Is you own your destiny. That's what that means.
Okay, so you're saying that we need to acknowledge that something happens, but not like ignoring like the sadness, stuff like that.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
First of all, thank you for your talk. In a few years, I'm going to be launching a product in the artificial intelligence space.
Cool.
Um,
What product?
It's going to be sort of an AI therapist, and the aim is to bring the cost of mental health from about £100 an hour down to zero.
Wow. Okay.
How would you go about finding mentors, especially for leadership, in a industry that doesn't actually exist yet?
Mm-hmm. So you want to look for people who embody some of either the characteristics that you admire or have relevant experience for your business, or maybe what you want was people who have the right relationships to help you propel your startup, and then go ask them to mentor you. I always say, listen, I've seen very few people who said a flat no when somebody asked them, I have the intention of doing this, or I'm at this point in my career and I would love to have you as a mentor. And by the way, if somebody says no, that's probably not the person you wanted to have in the first place.
Yeah.
But figure out, the other thing you need to do is to figure out what you want from that individual, but also communicate to them. Because then they can say, I have the time and the ability to fulfill your expectations, or maybe not, and then you can say, well, can you think about somebody who could be a good mentor for me? And then that person will make an introduction. But that's what you do. Think about your mentorship relationship also as a business, right? You need to have a business case for that person. Okay? Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, one more. And I think that's about it.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation, Anna. My name is Trudy, and I'm from Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago. At what point did did you realize that you are a leader, and at what point did you realize that you are a true leader?
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
That's a very difficult question, but here's my answer. You are all leaders in this room. To the extent that you have the ability to influence and to positively impact just one person's life, you're a leader already. I have to make the generational distinction because in my generation, we didn't even have leadership conversations, right? I always tell the story that I spent the first half of my career just with my head down, trying to deliver. I had moved to another country. I was having babies. My husband had to do the residency again. We needed a company to sponsor our green card. So there wasn't even a thought about leadership. You guys have this opportunity. You're here 3 days just talking about leadership skills and all that. You are leaders now, and you're true leaders now. So that's my answer to you. I don't know when I realized was probably, I remember being shocked when somebody who I considered a mentor to me actually asked me to go out for coffee because he wanted my advice, and I had one of those moments, really? That was probably the first time that I realized that somebody respected me enough to ask for my advice. But I will guess that I was already having some impact in people's lives even before that. So you are it. You're it now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know every party from one friend to another. That's awesome.
I don't remember whose presentation it was yesterday, but they were talking about it's not necessarily always what you know, but it's who you know. So I had a chance, as I mentioned earlier, to get to know Anna a few years ago. Anna is who introduced us to Maui, and as I was talking to Bernie Banks in the back of the room, I understand that he knows Anna because of she being a graduate of Northwestern, and he teaches there. And so it's one of those, like Anna is one of those people we commonly call a connector. And Anna is one of those people that when we talk about who you know and who you want to know, this is a prime example of that. So let's introduce. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Bernard Banks, also known as Bernie, is the Associate Dean for Leadership Development and Clinical Professor of Management at Northwestern University. He's a noted expert on the subjects of leadership and organizational change. As an Associate Dean, Bernie has been integrating leadership development initiatives across the school's global portfolio of degree programs. Before Northwestern, Bernie retired from the U.S. Army as a Brigadier General after leading West Point's Department of Behavioral Sciences and Leadership. In 1995, he was awarded the Army's prestigious General Douglas MacArthur Leadership Award. Bernie is a West Point graduate himself. He holds master's degrees from Northwestern, Columbia, and Harvard universities, and he earned a PhD in social organizational psychology from Columbia University. His work has been published in the Harvard Business Review, Military Psychology, and the New York Times. He's worked extensively with organizations like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Procter & Gamble, Mercedes-Benz, and Microsoft. So I give you Bernie Banks.
Oh, wow.
Who picked that walk-up music? That is not what I would have played. I don't know if you get the chance to pick your walk-up music. I was just in Boston, flew in this morning, and the World Series was going on. Now, that's a curious thing because we have the World Series, but we don't invite the world to participate in it. But they have in Boston this thing where Baby Shark is the walk-up music for one of their players. And so I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But that's just a curious aside. I have a curious mind. Who's the guy who's starting the AI thing that's going to take the cost down to zero? Where are you? Well, quick note, you take the cost down to zero, you'll make no money. You need to actually price that thing so you can make some money. So, here's what we're going to talk about this morning. We're going to have a conversation. I'm going to go through a quick deck, but then we're going to talk about why the future still will require the basics. Now, my understanding is you've had an opportunity in your time here to talk about things like AI and a variety of other things regarding the future of work. But the reality is, despite the fact that we have these advents in technology, work will still primarily be a human endeavor. And because it's a human endeavor, there will be some enduring truths. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, good. Now, next thing, I hate being up here on the stage. I've got to be down with the people. So, I'm going to come down. I'm not that tall, just listen to my voice. Okay? So, down where you are, that's number one. Number two, let's log out so we can check in. So, if you're not taking notes on your computer, stop trying to work on the case study. Stop trying to be on the gram and do all your other crap. Let's just all be present in the moment. Now, first I have to acknowledge the good people here from Morgan State, because that's where my parents met.
Yeah.
Where my parents met at Morgan State, so I have a deep affinity for that institution. I can thank the things that go on socially there for my very existence. So what were we discussing? One, an important question to consider, because questions are always more valuable than statements. Two, basic framework for what leaders are responsible for doing. Now here's the interesting thing about this thing we call leadership. There's never been a universally agreed upon definition of what we mean by leadership. Why do you think that is? Thousands upon thousands of scholars have examined this phenomenon, but we have not been able to come up with a universally agreed upon definition. What's the why?